Recently, I asked 3 random people what their favorite book of all time was. Last week, I read them all. Everybody knows the saying, don't judge a book by its cover, but I'm not gonna lie, I kinda do. Lately, I was rewatching Ted Lasso, and there's a really good line in the show where he says, be curious, not judgmental. I kinda took that to heart, and I decided that's what I would do. And here's how it went.
Hey man, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you have a favorite book of all time?
The book that got me into reading was And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie.
I'll check it out. Thank you, man.
Yeah,
Trevor.
And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This book is a murder mystery novel that takes place on this coastal remote island. So I felt it was a pretty fitting read for the beach. That's why last week I decided to bring it with me on my trip to Turks and Caicos. So this was the first murder mystery novel that I've ever read, and it was my first time being introduced to Agatha Christie. And honestly, this was a perfect introduction to both the genre and the author. This book did something that I really admire, where the chapters are segmented into almost puzzle pieces. Like, one would be an internal monologue. The next might be a couple of people talking about their perspective of the events. And another might be a completely detached, almost spectator perspective where you actually get facts. So all of these elements kind of work together to create this reasonable doubt. And it honestly is a perfect way to form a novel like this, because it wouldn't have stuck the landing if you knew too much or too little. And trust me, it really sticks the landing. I also really loved the characters here. So all of them are pretty bad people who have done some pretty questionable things. But there's this part of you that can't help but root for them. And maybe it's like this instinct of fear, but I found myself genuinely wanting them to get off of this island. Now, all of that being said, there is one thing about this book that I think I need to talk about. Based off of the cover of this book, I'm sure you may know where I'm going with this. This book has a really excessive use of the N-word. And look, I'm aware that this came out in 1939, and usually I would try to look at it through a contextual lens. However, it is so deeply ingrained in the plot that it's kind of hard to separate it from this book as a whole. I mean, the title when it was first published was literally called, not only is the island named, but there's a poem that is extremely relevant to the story, and it's referenced a lot throughout this book. So, like I said, it gets a little hard to separate it when it's this crucial to the story. So supposedly in modern editions of the book, publishers have changed the text to exclude the use of the word, but I thrifted an older version of the book and didn't really know they had changed this at the time of recording. Now, all of that being said, in terms of writing and execution, this book is near perfect. I had such a good time with it overall. So on the flight back to Atlanta, I decided to read book number 2.
I have a YouTube channel where I review books and stuff, and I was wondering, what's your favorite book of all time? Do you have
I
one?
love The Great Gatsby, like
The Great
classic
Gatsby?
one. Yeah.
Okay.
The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. So I read the majority of this book on the flight back to Atlanta, then I finished it up the next day. So in total, only took me 2 days to read. So this book revolves around Jay Gatsby, basically the talk of the town in 1920s Long Island. So obviously I'd heard about this book a lot growing up. I mean, it's one of the seminal American classics. But to be completely honest, I never really had much interest in reading this book. I don't really know why. I think some part of me thought it was going to be overrated or boring. But after reading it, I can honestly say I get it. This book's amazing. This book is under 200 pages, and honestly, that's what I found to be its biggest strength. It's a very concise book, and I always love a book that doesn't waste my time. Long books have their place, but I have such a soft spot for books that come in with a clear idea and they just execute it. Another huge strength for this book is its ability to paint a picture. The writing and the characters kind of build up this nice, vibrant atmosphere. And honestly, it's really easy to get lost in, which I think kind of lines up perfectly with what this book was trying to say in the first place. Let's talk about the characters here, because this was a huge highlight for me. I loved the narrator, Nick. I always love a reserved character. He's so non-reactive, which kind of allows you to step into his shoes a lot. But when he is reactive, it's a lot more impactful, in my opinion. Of course, I loved Gatsby. If there's one person who drives home the themes of the dangers of idealism, it's definitely him. I loved his plot with Daisy and just being able to watch how the past is able to so easily dictate somebody's life and control their actions. I think that's a really interesting thing. Also, while we're on the topic, I want to talk about Daisy and Tom. Both of these characters are like perfectly written. They actually kind of reminded me of Tom and Shiv from Succession. They're two people who are constantly kind of hiding behind their wealth, but it's that same wealth that kind of keeps them boxed in this idea of security. So they can never truly find their ideal form of happiness. And I kind of thought it was the perfect depiction of the callousness that comes with like extreme wealth. This is one of those books that I just can't stop thinking about at all. And I'm so glad that this ended up in my recommendations, because this is one that I definitely can see revisiting time and time again throughout my life. So with that one finished, I only had one more to tackle.
Hey, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you had like a favorite book of all time.
Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng is
Little
good.
Fires Everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last one, Little Fires Everywhere. So this is the book that kind of perfectly captured the essence of what this whole entire video is about. It was a quietly challenging book for me, not in its language, but in some of the concepts that it tries to tackle. This is a book about two families, the Richardsons, who are this suburban cookie cutter white family. I mean, just look at these names. And then contrasting, you have Mia Warren and her daughter Pearl. They're almost nomadic. They've been bouncing all around the United States for a long time, and they have decided to settle in this place. Pearl is a teenager, and a lot of the Richardson kids are teenagers. Their lives start to kind of intertwine in these really interesting ways. It tackles topics like race relations, class studies, coming of age, the effect of judgment, abortion. I would say at its core, primarily, this book is about motherhood. And it's a book that tackles all this with a lot of nuance, which I really respected. So I called this quietly challenging because I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not a woman. I'm probably never going to be a mother. So on its surface, I don't think a book about motherhood and a lot of different teen relations would be one that I stop to get. But this book was such a great example on how to take on these really broad and big topics with a lot of humanity. And for a story like this to work, you have to be really deeply engaged in these characters. I felt for these characters. I felt for their dilemmas, and in some points she does such a good job that you almost feel that you're in the room and it's happening to you or somebody that you love. There was one point in the book when I realized just how strong the character work was. It just expressed a side of motherhood that I just have never read, or just parenthood in general in this one particular instance. And I can say she did a really good job where no one character is simple and none of them are inherently right or wrong. I found this idea perfectly summarized here in the book. Now, the first 1/3 of this book is a little slow. It took me a minute to get into, but around 2/3 of the way through, I really started to find myself engaging with these characters a lot more. And then the third act of this book is honestly a perfect climax. Like everything that it needed to hit is done so exceptionally well. But overall, this was definitely the most surprising book of the bunch. And it honestly worked out perfectly being the last book, because I feel like it kind of perfectly summarized what I wanted from this challenge, this idea, whatever you want to call it. Because it introduced me to all of these ideas and concepts that typically I wouldn't really find myself reading about. And maybe some ideas that I would have normally overlooked. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you for watching. I had a great time doing this. I think I may do this again in the future, but I want to do it with your books. So if you have a favorite book of all time, drop them in the comments. Go out there, go read, go be curious. Don't be judgmental.